I would like to first invite our, friend, a philosopher and guide, Dr. Kavita Sharma. Dr. Kavita Sharma, who has been principal at Hindu College, Delhi University, and she later on was directed to India International Center. She is a renowned scholar, studied literature, English, and she has also studied in Canada. And there are a variety of other, list. Her website is also there, Kavita Sharma's website. You can go and visit about her achievements that she has done. The most important aspect is that she has been the president of Asian University, which was set up by under SAARC aegis, who would like to focus more on heritage and modernism. How it is influencing modernism and how India is receiving this modernism, how this education policy is able to address the challenges as well as the strength that we have currently. So, Madam Kavita Sharma, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I've been speaking on the new education policy, and I have already spoken on the affirmative action policies there and the restructuring. So I thought we keep talking about nationalism, but what does it mean? So let us look at what is our own heritage and how, for the first time, it has got incorporated here at different levels, all the three levels for that matter: school education, college education, vocational education, even in the at times even in the doctoral postgraduate doctoral. It's a very good, I think it's a very good national policy of education, but we need a far greater elaborate roadmap and with stepping stones, like a flow chart, time bound. It needs a political will because there's bound to be resistance with so much of restructuring. It's like an overhauling of the system itself. And the other thing that you will need is that we have devalued the profession of education. If you take a class and you say, how many of you want to become teachers? Hardly a hand will go up. That's because the profession itself is devalued, and we have to once again bring it back to its value. Now, also, we have forgotten that education was a very important part of our independence movement. And all major leaders talked about education. You had Gandhi's basic education, which later on Dr. Zakir Hussain tried to implement as Nai Talim. Then you had Sri Aurobindo, who talked of integral education, taking his cue from the five koshas, the Annamay Kosh, Pranmay Kosh, Manomay Kosh, Vigyanmay Kosh, and Anandmay Kosh. He modified it and he said physical, vital, mental, psychic, and spiritual. And that each coach, each part of the being has to be integrated through education, has to be developed through education. Now, when you come to colleges and universities, most of the time, it is only the mind, and that too in a very ambiguous fashion, that is being developed. Vivekanand talked about education, but he talked about it with an emphasis on service to people. Tagore talked about education and even established Shantiniketan. He talked about the universal man and the values of a human being radiating from Asia onwards. We had Ishwar Chand Vidyasagar talking about education without caste, creed. So there was lots of ideas and forming an integral part of our independence movement. What happened to us at the time of independence? We had at that time 25 universities, which were a pale shadow of the London University. I won't go into the history of that on how they said the three presidency universities, they said we'll model it after the London University, but we won't give it autonomy. We will give it autonomy only in name. We will pack the governance with our own people. And because they said it is dangerous to give autonomy to Indians. We seem to have carried on with that. Anybody who's been a part of the education system, especially public sector education, will vouch for it. We also forgot our own heritage of higher education. We had Takshila, and then we were followed with Buddhist universities like Nalanda, Vikramshila, and they taught a wide variety of subjects. So what we adopted was an alien system, which was alienating, which everybody talked about. And it fulfilled Macaulay's prophecy. Of course, it was not all bad, because we are all products of that. And somewhere we have also struggled with our own selves and we have moved forward. There was also this debate of Anglicists versus Orientalists, in which the Anglicists won. But what we needed was, and which Madan Mohan Malviya recognized when he set up Banaras Hindu University, that you need modern education with its roots in your own heritage. Now, there was a whole movement on that. My college, Hindu College, was a part of that movement, as was the Hindu College in Kolkata, as was the Hindu School in Banaras, which merged into the Banaras Hindu University. Now, since we worked on a borrowed system, we hesitated to innovate because we were not confident enough to innovate. And so what happened is that over a period of time, even when the West had dropped away some of, well, UK actually, had dropped away some of those things, we still carried on with it. And we forgot also that this system was introduced by a colonial power for colonized people. And therefore, it had no ambitions to make a thinking nation. It only wanted a nation of clerks. It's also not a coincidence that many of our leaders, independence leaders, when they went to UK to study, they understood and realized what a vast difference there was in the system being there, being imparted there and what was imparted there. And they actually came back with ideas of industrialization, ideas of modernization, ideas of democracy. They learned from the French Revolution. And so um, therefore, what 2020, NP 2020 is doing is, it's trying to tell us that look at yourself and move forward from a point of confidence within yourself, which I think the elite has left. Now, in school education, very quickly, they have said that medium of instruction should be the mother tongue or a regional language or a home language, whatever is possible, and up to class 5, but maybe even up to grade 8 and even going beyond. Now, what will happen is, since our aspiration is to learn English, this will meet with resistance. So while we do this, we must also ensure that English is taught equally well. Now, a child understands fundamental concepts in their own language, even the so-called English language schools. A lot of talk is going on in Hindi, and a lot of explanation or whatever is the regional language is going on in that. But it's a name, an English medium school. However, we must ensure also the teaching of English and proficiency in English while we explain concepts for easier understanding in Hindi. And for this, we need quality textbooks in different languages. And we need teachers of different languages. Many people can't teach in those different languages. And so it has said you hire teachers from different states, you can use technology in the teaching of language. And it has also tried to do initiatives or to spell out initiatives like Bharat Ek, Shresth Bharat, Bharat Ek, Shresth Bharat, in which you learn about the unity of different languages. They are not as if they're completely separate. And most of us know, if, for example, I speak Hindi, I can understand a lot of Marathi. I can understand a lot of Gujarati. Actually, I instinctively start reading Gujarati when I go to Gujarat, and Marathi when I go to, Bombay, because it comes naturally. You can read it. It has also tried to bring in classical languages like Sanskrit, but also classical Tamil, classical Telugu. We have an embarrassment of riches actually. It has also tried to bring in Pali, Persian, and Prakrit, and the literary works in that, and that they should be widely available in schools. So the skills of the children should include knowledge of India and the contributions of ancient India to India itself, which we have again forgotten, which continue in many of our mindsets in modern India. But what they have not said, and which Raviji would be very happy to hear, is ostensibly they have not talked about translation, which they must. If they want to implement this agenda, then translation industry, if you want to call it that, has to grow by leaps and bounds. And so this must be incorporated at every level. Now, they have tried to bring in Indian knowledge systems. um, and which includes tribal knowledge, indigenous and traditional ways of learning, and they have to be all incorporated into contemporary teaching of mathematics, astronomy, architecture, aesthetics, etc. Now, again, something we forget. For example, you will put a central university in a place like Koraput. Why I'm taking that example is because I was on the board of the studies there at one time. Now, you put it in Koraput, which is a strongly tribal area, but again, you have standardized it. What about the tribal literature? What about the oral literature? What about the art manifestations of the tribes? What about the stories? You know, even if you take epics, the tribal epic, the tribal version of that epic is vastly different from the classical Sanskrit epic. Then they have tried to bring in values like Nishkam, Karma, Swachhata, Ahimsa, Satya, Shanti. But the point is, you need teachers who understand that well enough to be able to simplify that without jargon. So you need tremendous amount of training. They've also said read things like Panchatantra, Hitopadesh, Jatak tales in their original language. And also understand, for example, Panchatantra went all over the world. And a lot of tales in the world are inspired by Panchatantra, which people forget, including Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, including Arabian Nights. And we haven't focused on that or tried to do anything about that. Now, in higher education, again, they have talked about awareness of ancient Indian education system. I would really like to know which teachers of ours know actually anything about the ancient Indian education system. They keep saying Gurukul, Gurukul. That was not the only thing. You had universities, you were teaching mathematics, you were teaching architecture, you were teaching medicine, you were teaching surgery. What are we talking only about Gurukuls? And there was a standard procedure of evaluation, of admission, and all of that. So I think we need to understand that, and that's really what we call contemporary, modern, liberal arts education. It's a acquaintance or an understanding of a wide range of subjects. At the same time, we have lost our relationship between teacher and taught. Now, I'm not talking about the Gurukul system. I'm talking about a gratitude to the teacher to be able to take you on the path. I'm not talking of blind obedience. I'm yes, you may dissent, you may have a difference of opinion, but also know something about that subject. Have the humility to first know. So, as one of our Upanishads says, education is nothing but a dialogue between the teacher and the taught. The rest is frivolity. You can make all these beautiful buildings and IT and everything, but without a dialogue between the teacher and the taught, you don't get education. You get knowledge, you get skill, but you don't get education. Now, it has also talked about research, and I'm very glad it has talked about the National Research Foundation, but which again it has tried to incorporate what I call living Indian knowledge systems. I dislike the word traditional knowledge systems because that somehow puts them into the back burner. No, those are the knowledge systems that most of India lives by, except for us Western elite urbanized people. Most of India lives by those knowledge systems. And it has talked about internationalization of education. Now, again, I want to talk about this because once we have divided our country into silos, we have state universities, which is the bulk, 88% education happens in state universities, and the rest, there are few central, 40 odd central universities. Now, in these state universities, you have a territorial jurisdiction, which means that people of only from that state and neighboring areas will be able to join that university. Again, you're creating silos and you're creating a state in which national integration is not possible. So I think you should have an entrance exam for everybody and let everybody study. Whoever qualifies, you study there. And so again, you have in the undergraduate courses that I won't go into restructuring, but they have tried to include several Indian languages. They've tried to emphasize also the arts, music, visual arts, performing arts, sports, and India's deep traditions in this field together with yoga. And also these are to be fully funded programs. Now, this is something we have neglected. As once I was talking to the great scholar and poet Jeevan Pani, and he said, you know, we talk of superpower. India is already a superpower in culture, which we fail to recognize. So I think we need to look at that. And then research has to be undertaken across the board. You know, uh, we have to understand what many years ago David Orr said. I love his 6 myths of higher education. He says we have ruined everything that is worth living for, whether it is our environment, water, air, forests, rivers, seas, and we think technology and knowledge and technology will manage planet Earth. We found it doesn't manage it. We think we can restore all that we have destroyed, not possible. We think ignorance is a solvable problem. No, it isn't. The more you specialize, the more areas of ignorance you have. We think the purpose of education is upward mobility. No, it's only one of the purposes, not a purpose. We think we are at the cultural pinnacle of all understanding, which it is not. We have to understand that it is our craftsmen who have kept India's flag flying. And anywhere you go, you will find that. And we have neglected that. So, in a way, to bring those systems into the mainstream is a very good thing. We have just declared that they're illiterate, they're ignorant. Look at their skill in architecture, in historical buildings, in embroidery, in textile designs, in metallurgy, in filigree work, in all kinds of handicraft, in all kinds of performing arts. And there is a meticulousness which is hard to come by among those whom we train in modern education. So, how to bring about this is basically what we need to look at. And so, this all has to be systematically researched and studied. I'm not going to take up, I'm just going to conclude now because I really want people to discuss. Is so, what is that? What is it when we talk of all this that NEP, that the National Policy of Education is trying to do? It is trying to jolt our memory to the past because elite, the Western urban Macaulay's children have, and it is their voice that counts. We seem to have forgotten it completely. And therefore, what I keep saying, a person without memory is a person without identity. So if we don't know what we are ourselves, we will have no identity. And so we will be blown, as Mahatma Gandhi said, I want to stay in one place and I don't mind winds coming. But we should be stationed in one place. We don't know what is our place. We have all kinds of strange notions. Then we have to establish this connection between our heritage and contemporary education. And so we have to understand that lots of our cultural values, like our inability to take action against anybody, it comes from our cultural values. उसके बच्चों का क्या होगा, उसकी बीवी का क्या होगा, उसके माँ बाप का क्या होगा. Nobody in the West thinks about it. They just hand you a pink slip and say go home, right? So these are our cultural values. But I want to put a cautionary word. When we talk of studying our heritage, it is not a revivalist agenda. It is also not an Orientalist, romanticized agenda. We have to study our heritage with all its strengths and weaknesses. We have to understand that there is a relationship between tradition and modernity, and that with the passage of time, certain parts of the tradition become diseased, become irrelevant, they have to be gotten rid of. Values change, attitude changes, societies change, according to what Indian tradition calls Desh Kal, where you are and what time you are living in. But this is a continuous conversation that a nation, people of the nation have to have with each other in a and with the nation itself. And it requires a spirit of understanding, not blinkered by ideology, not blinkered by isms, but an ability to hold plurality, multiple voices, multiple visions, to be held together simultaneously and be able to see the validity of aspects of each one of them, so that we don't have just tolerance, we have acceptance of each other's views. And so if the NPE can set this into motion, it would have done a great service to India. Thank you.
Great, ma'am. Very, very thankful to you for wonderful, cap in totality of the new education policy, including your vision, how it can be implemented, and what are the things which could have been added little more, or maybe they are there in latent form. It is just someone to decipher it and implement it. For let's come back to Madam. My question to you is, ma'am, if you would like to answer, is
the way there are very much negativism at the school level, especially in the village areas, in a large scale, and you have been dealing with a very good college as well as elite Indian, you know, uh, uh, college as well as society, India International Center, plus now the grouping SARC, Asian University, uh, there I can understand that the standard of education has been quite good. But if you, as a scholar who has studied in Canada, and you have also seen the outer world, how deeply they do the research, and how much critically they examine things, and the kind of shaping that takes place when you are while you are doing your PhD, so I still believe that there is still needs a big boost in that area. So there are lots of research scholars, teachers, professors who don't understand the quality, so how to instill those thought, right?
Yeah. देखिए, at the bottom line is the human being. And that is why I said that one of our Upanishads says that it's a relationship between the teacher and the taught, the rest is frivolity. But the basic premise is integrity. And I'm not just talking of financial integrity. I'm talking of your mental integrity, integrity of the mind. Now, you can have the worst system. A policy cannot deliver without people, right? So you can make the best policies and they can all fail, or they can all be put in cold storage because there is nobody willing to deliver it. So the worst system can be very good outcomes with good people. And the best system can have negative and does have negative outcomes with not so good people. So it is the human integrity. Now, if you were to ask me, what are the three factors since I built the university? Well, I would first want good teachers, because if I had good teachers, and not just subject wise good, values wise good, if I had those, then the resources will also come and buildings will also come. But I can make the best buildings and put in the best Wi-Fi system and ICT system, and I don't have teachers with integrity, with a desire to impart and disseminate, nothing will happen. It will just be a showcase. So the other thing is, you know what Radhakrishnan said? He said, I'm afraid of the devil, but I'm very scared of the educated devil. Now, those of us, unfortunately, who become educated and become a part of the system, learn better than anybody else on how to work the system to our advantage. Which is why, we do not improve anything. We just use the system so that I can benefit, the individual can benefit. The third thing is, what I was saying, it's a colonial system that persists. Now you have the affiliating system, and you've been talking about it since 1858, if I'm not wrong. It is affiliating system one is creating a huge mess. Now I know of universities where they have 2,000 colleges affiliated to them. Does the vice chancellor even know where those colleges are? I have been associated, yes, with the elite institutions, but I have also traveled. I've been part of a lot of committees. The kind of fraud that happens in the name of education. That's also because we think one size fits everybody. अब आप कहीं बैठे हुए हैं एक रूरल कॉलेज में, तो आप शेली या कीट्स पे रिसर्च क्यों कर रहे हैं? So this centralized business that you must attend so many refresher courses, so many orientation courses, you must have a PhD. Well, our PhDs are not worth the paper they're written on. And because our promotions of the teacher and the taught all depend on how many you have guided, what is the impact factor? You know how impact factors are manipulated? 10 people get together and say, "Tum mera quote karna, main tumhara quote karunga." And so impact factors. So really there are no role models. And ये education जो चीज होती है ना, this is like a kadi. इसमें एक भी weak link होता है तो it breaks down. Now, who are the governors? Who are the people? You know, we have a crisis of governance. Now, UGC was not supposed to be catering to 1,000 universities, right? तो वो अपना काम नहीं कर सकते, उनके हाथ में कुछ है भी नहीं. It's a paper tiger. All they can do is to stop your grant. Well, that's not the way to function, right? If you are supposed to be in charge of maintenance of standards of higher education, you can't just do it by a danda of saying कि अब मैं तुमको, and that grant 95% is spent on salaries. How can you stop the grant? So we have built up a culture of mediocrity. We have not built up a culture where we talk of American universities. The teacher frames his own syllabi. He does his own evaluation. He does his own research. I did LLM in Canada, and I did on ownership and control of foreign investment, quite different from my literature. And then I couldn't agree with my supervisor, and we used to discuss it all the time, my dissertation. He and I did not agree. I came from a developing economy. His point of view was from a developed economy. He didn't hold it against me. He said, as long as you can give me a convincing argument, I'm right. I'm fine. Again, when I wrote, we had a choice whether to do an exam or whether to write a publishable paper. I chose to write a publishable paper and researched it for 10 years. All the Supreme Court judgments of US and Canada of 10 years, I researched and put it there. He said, very well researched, but I don't know what you think. So he gave me a C. And I said, how can this be? I worked so hard. He said, yes, I could have found this on the net. I want to know what you think. Now, when I had done my LLB here, every time you discuss, they say, but the Supreme Court said this, and the discussion ends. So if the Supreme Court has said this, so what? What is the analysis? So we do not, as our system, we don't teach people to think, and we don't teach people, we don't take it in the right spirit. Yahan pe, if you disagree with your supervisor, aapko PhD nahi milne wali hai. I don't want to go, as I told you, I've spent 48 years here in this profession. And I understand how I have been an activist. I led a huge delegation to in session. Why do you use your teachers for census? Why do you use your teachers for election duty? Ration card बनवाना होता है तो teacher जाता है.
Yes, for everything. Yeah.
For everything, it's the teacher, and you want the teacher to form your syllabus. There is no way that person will do it. The way that teacher is humiliated by the bureaucrat.
Yes.
वो उसके हाथ जोड़ता रहता है. Sir, मेरा इतना तो कर दीजिए. Right? You know how promotions take place. Right? You know how equipment is sent. So if we start now going into it, a policy may be very good, but that policy for its implementation, education is something जहाँ पूरी कड़ी, अगर आपका जो governance है, वो corrupt है, intellectually, financially, divided in silos by caste, creed, religion, region, that person's decision making is faulty, and everybody working under that person will have faulty, actions. Also, we are all human beings, as Radhakrishnan said. He said कि ये teacher ऐसा नहीं है कि उसको कूट के foundation stone में डाल दो. The teacher also has to run his family, get his children educated. ऐसे थोड़ी है कि उसी की सारी idealism आप एक teacher और doctor पे डाल देते हैं. इसीलिए they are getting the most corrupt. They are becoming the most corrupt. वो स्कूल में नहीं पढ़ाएगा, कहेगा मेरी ट्यूशन में आ जाना. Right. So it is
a question है इसी बात पे. तो in spite of all this that we have, for example, कुछ teacher, including you or Raman sir, and there are many, whom whom I see personally. There are good numbers, who are self-motivated ones, right? So in spite of all this, which is prevalent in India, they have been changing the world, as an activist, as a social worker, as a social entrepreneur, as a teacher, professor, mentor, friend, whatever. Many times you spend money from your own pocket for a student,
Oh, lots of time.
right?
Not
So,
just-
so that kind of, teacher certainly gets rewarded in a form, and that is respect that you get,
no, that's the only thing. I mean, if one starts detailing, at least for myself, the struggles, the kind of politics that is played with you.
Right.
I used to thank God that I'm privileged, that I don't need a job. I used to joke with my husband कि रोटी कपड़ा मकान तो तुमने मेरा settle कर दिया है. So
Right.
I'm going to fight the system, right? But
Right.
I know if I was a man trying to run a family, I would have said ठीक है यार, मेरे को क्या है, मैं आके जो तुम कहोगे मैं कर देती हूँ, खत्म हुई
Right.
बात.
Right.
There are human compulsions too. So how many people for their whole lives can remain self-motivated? Now, people with privileges also don't remain self-motivated. That's another issue. However, अब आप South Asian University की बात कर रहे हैं. That university, आप पाकिस्तान के संग यूनिवर्सिटी बनाने बैठे हैं. 3 साल से गवर्निंग बॉडी नहीं कर रहे हैं. क्यों? क्योंकि पाकिस्तान के संग हम नहीं बैठेंगे. अरे तो यूनिवर्सिटी क्यों बनाई थी उनके संग? How do you expect that university to run? So don't put your foreign policy agendas on a university, or don't make that university. Your Nalanda University has never taken off.
It kept
Has
on
never
operating
taken
from RK Puram,
You see,
It
but
will not take off.
yeah, my submission is, Ravi ji, that we have in this rut, what we are into, we have to make a change, that everybody accepts that.
Right.
We have
So
to make
it-
a change.
But you have
Alok
to
ji.
start in small pockets, and you
Right.
have to start now. You have
Yes.
to identify
Alok ji,
whatever
let's hear from
resistance-
Raman sir,
Yeah,
who is
Dr.
also a self-motivated teacher, and he felt low when his position was not made permanent and he was not given, the job that he wanted. But he has not, stopped himself from being a good teacher. So I mean, what motivates you, Raman sir? in
Dr.
that?
Dr. Raman sir, 1 second. I went through the same career as you said, after completion of my PG from JNU, I was an ad hoc lecturer at Jamshedpur Cooperative College and Jamshedpur Women's College PG department for 4 years, and that post remained ad hoc for 4 years. Finally, I had to leave, and government of Bihar did not induct a permanent lecturer post in all over Bihar for 14 years, and I became a sufferer. Finally, I had to leave education side and I joined Indian Air Force. And I learned history throughout my life, and I have been doing fighter controlling throughout my career. It has got no connection. I was Kargil main controller at Srinagar Airport. Handling supersonics, mix of supersonics in a limited airspace. It is, how challenging it is. It has nothing to do with what I have learned throughout my life during my education. So what you're saying is correct.
Sorry, it does have something to do. It has trained your mind.
Right, it has.
So
It
don't
has.
say
It
that.
has. It has trained
You want to know
neurons.
the truth? I had to suffer. I fought Hindu college for 10 years in the court.
Right. Yes.
And
No,
I
I mean,
won the case.
Here, any academics, most of the time, has to go through certain pain
Yes.
either at the PhD level when your
Yes.
supervisor is, telling you to write something which you don't want to do. And or at times he is favoring somebody and trying to stop your PhD in right time because he wants somebody else to come over and take a position which is opening there, Such things are, this is something, which is very unhealthy, filthy thing, So, I mean, how to come out of this? I mean, if you survive, it is a good thing. I have kept myself aloof from this system, I have been, since I left GNU, I did my own world, and
Ravi,
whatever I wanted to do, I've been doing it and I will continue to do that.
Ravi, my firm conviction is, my firm belief is that this situation will improve if we start now at the secondary primary school level, when these children develop these values, and then when they come out of the school and colleges, then our society will be very different.
But
Right.
Alok ji, uske liye आपके पास इंटेग्रिटी ऑफ टीचर एंड ऑफ द गवर्नेंस सिस्टम ऑफ दैट स्कूल होना चाहिए ना।
मैम
अब
हम
आपकी-
मैम हम
अगर
कर
आप-
सकते हैं।
नहीं, हम कर तो जरूर सकते हैं और वो अपने आप
But
होगा भी।
we need to
That's
create
what
a we need to create a kind of army of people, you know, of such kind who can kind of do something, you know, add some value. नहीं तो सिर्फ पेपर में रह के आ जाएगा, पॉलिसी आएंगी, फंड्स भी आएंगी, and it will be
Yes.
misused, you know.
Yes,